Running a successful project is not just about getting things done. There's actually strategy behind it. And in this video, I'm going to share with you some project strategic leadership tips so that you can motivate your team. What is strategic project leadership? The concept comes out of the need to not just get things done, but to really tie in what you are doing from a project standpoint to overall strategy of the organization. For far too long, project management has kind of had a bad rap of just being tactically focused and getting tasks done. But in today's day and age with competition and really the ability of things just moving a lot faster, strategy has to be at the forefront when it comes to managing projects. You need to make sure that everything you're doing is linking to an overall vision, the strategy that the organization has come up with. And as a project manager, that becomes even more important for you as a role, because it's not just about inspiring your team members, which is a really important part of strategic project leadership, but it's tying everything in and teaching everyone why it is that they're doing what they're doing. And how exactly do you do that? Well, let's get into it. So just a side note, I actually have for you some amazing tips on 6 basics you need to be aware of to have successful projects. I'm going to share with you how you can get your hands on that a little bit later on in the video. Have a standard project management approach. This is critical because you cannot be strategic if you're constantly firefighting. And what happens a lot in projects that I see that don't really have a standard approach to running projects, or everyone is really doing kind of their own thing, thinking that they're adding value to what they're doing. But in essence, sometimes they're being counterproductive by canceling activities that someone else is doing that they're not realizing that they're doing. And so if you're going to be strategic, you can't be firefighting. So there has to be a proactiveness part to this strategic leadership and project management. You need to have a standard approach. Everyone has to be in agreement with how they're going to be running the project. So everyone should know exactly what the charter is and all the information that they're supposed to be delivering on. There should be a standard action plan that everyone accesses and uses, and that you as a strategic leader can just kind of review, make sure everyone is on track. You also want to ensure that everyone is actually in agreement from a strategy standpoint of looking at risks in advance. That becomes really important. And then as well, proactively, how are you going to deal with things that pop up? So if you have a standard approach to your project management, a really good solid framework from start to finish, that makes your strategic leadership abilities in your project so much easier, because you can cut out the firefighting because you have that framework and structure. Now, please note, I'm not indicating that you should have process, because as awesome as process is and having structure, you can have too much of a good thing. So it's about really finding the practicality of it, streamlining it so you just get what you need that is going to have a really amazing impact. And if you're not too sure where to go, or you're like, oh my goodness, this is the first time I'm kind of hearing this, how do I get this information? I have you covered, because I have Slay Project Management, my online course, which is a practical one that talks about all this and really teaches you how to be a strategic leader in project management. The link for that is below. Develop a strategic mindset. Now, how do you do this? Interestingly enough, you actually have to take a step back, and you just don't focus on the things that you're doing. You start to look at everything holistically, looking at the bigger picture, and you look at things from, I guess, another project dependency perspective. To develop your mindset, you need to have that understanding that your project is probably not in isolation. There's probably other projects that are going to have some sort of connection to your project. I've never really come across a project that is in pure isolation. It usually is going to have an impact on a department, or it may have an impact on some other project that's being done, or vice versa. So by having a strategic mindset, it's opening yourself up to understanding that and speaking to those other departments, project managers, and understanding how they're linked, seeing their plans, their timelines, so you can have an understanding to make sure that you're either delivering into their project, because it could be that, or vice versa, they're delivering into your project. So that just becomes something that through practice and asking the questions, it's really going to allow you to see the overall vision of what's happening and realize it's not just about you. It's not just about your world, the project that you're in. There's something greater to that. And you may have to really take a look of, do I have to give something up in my project to have the bigger picture? That's part of the strategy mindset. What is the overall goal and how are we all contributing to it to ensure that the overall strategy for the organization is going to be met? Because that is ultimately what you're doing. Your project is to meet an overall strategy. So it's not about the ego anymore. Drop that at the door, bring up the strategic mindset, and look at that bigger picture. Always ask why. This is another technique in order to really, tune up your strategic mindset, is understand the why. Just don't blindly accept everything for what it is. If you have an understanding of the why, you may have some insight that you can add to either your project or the strategy overall. Not only that, by asking the why and then teaching your team to ask the why, you're going to come up with a whole bunch of other potential suggestions, ideas, or even just clarification and solidification of, now I get why we're doing what we're doing, and more buy-in because of it. That's really important from a strategic leadership perspective, is motivating your team, getting them to buy into what's going on so that they can get excited and motivated. And the why is a big part of that. Do not neglect why you're doing what you're doing, and to get really good clarity on that. Implement change control forms. All right, now this is similar to the why. You want to have an understanding as to what is going on, but the reason from a strategic perspective, this is really important. I've seen too many projects that get changed based on a whim. And that whim could be from a senior executive who doesn't understand the nuances of everything, and everyone just goes, okay, we'll do it. And yet it has a complete negative impact on time, scope, budget, adding to resources, maybe even putting more activities onto someone, stretching them thin, so the quality then also suffers. It's very, very interesting that when you start thinking of a strategic mindset, you're going to ask, why are you asking that question? But you're also going to put some framework around that too, which is why the change control form is really important. Now, change control is not meant to be an overly long, arduous process. It should be something simple and quick and a one-pager. And in fact, in my course, Slay Project Management, that's exactly what it is. How do you do that very efficiently and ensure that what people are asking is not a whim, but it is something extremely useful? So there's just some really set questions like, why, what is your request? Why are you changing this? What do you feel is the impact going to be? You need to ask the person who's having the request, how is this going to impact what I'm doing? Is there any monies, additional monies, extra resources? You want to have that person who's having the request to really think through their request. That's strategy. You just don't do things on the whim or a gut. Not saying that gut reaction is a bad thing, because I do believe in having a good gut reaction. But when you're talking about a project that's in the middle of its execution and someone wants to make a major shift or change, absolutely, you have to be thoughtful, you have to be strategic. Is this really making sense to our overall strategy of what we're trying to accomplish here? And what is the impact? So that change control form is a great way to ensure that you're on track with strategy, but it's also another strategic leadership tool in your back pocket of how to challenge people in a respectful way, in a professional way, and that you just don't accept everything that's being kind of thrown at you, but to challenge it very professionally so it shows your strategic mindset without people getting upset. Because in essence, you may think immediately with the recommendation that it's a no, but if you were to say that, people would feel like, oh, why is it that they're making that decision? So it's just another professional way to show the due diligence without saying, hey, I'm open to any idea, we just have to make sure it fits. So that's a really, really important technique and tool to implement in strategic leadership. Build communication and collaboration with your teams. Your teams are your lifeline. It does not matter how great your documentation is. If you don't have a good rapport and collaboration and communication with your team, then your documentation, no one's going to execute on it. So part of strategic leadership is obviously all that buy-in. We have the right processes, they're streamlined, all that wonderful stuff. But the key to it is your team collaborative, and are you communicating with them so everybody knows what's going on? That's really key. You want to build that motivation. You want to build that belonging. Now, the good news is if you search Adriana Girdler Teams in the search bar in YouTube, I have some videos that talk more in depth around team building. I do recommend you take a look at them. Okay, you know what? Now's the time where I said I would share with you how you can get your hands on those 6 basic things you need for projects. Well, here it is. And how do you get it? You get it underneath this video. There's a link just for you. So check it out. Make sure you watch this next video. It's a step-by-step video on how to improve your leadership skills. On that note, if you can like this video, if you found value in it, please join our community by subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.